Good morning, happy Sunday to you. It's time for another Insta-Church, the place where the hungover and the sober alike have no excuse to miss. Well, it's been an interesting week for me. I got my head bitten off at a grocery store. Sorry. You know the episode of South Park where Cartman eats a theme park, like a roller coaster? And he has to crap it out at the end. And when he does, he's like, finally gets it out and he flushes on accident. And he's like, guys, it's a habit. That's what happened to me. I was Cartman crapping on a roller coaster at the grocery store because I accidentally got within like 3 feet of this woman. She turned around and she screamed at me with her gloves and her mask. She's like, 6 feet, get back. I was like, whoa, 2 to 10 much? I didn't say that, but I felt it because I was like, that is, I feel like a little much considering I didn't get anything else. Like, I've got decades of experience with just sort of like having a general bubble size, 3-foot size bubble with people. I haven't yet learned to adapt to this new 6-foot status quo. Like, this is all new to us, like me included. Sorry. Anyway, but I get it. Look, she had every right to defend her space, but there's a lot of fear there, right? And so when we're not getting what we want, in her case, her health and security and safety is what she, where her motivation was coming from, the true character's revealed. And to me, all I know of this person now is that they were really mean and left me feeling very little, and I just didn't intend that. And so I leave wishing for something, a different interaction with this person. But I think about how soon our situations are going to be very different. We're eventually not going to be quarantined. Eventually we'll be re-released back into society. We'll be back in our grocery stores, in our stadiums, in our concerts, and soon life will be as it was. And we will be back participating in those things that gave us the confidence, the security, feeling of strength, purpose. So I want to explore the idea that yes, true character is revealed when we're not getting what we want, of course. But what about when we are getting what we want? What about when we feel like we're doing everything right? What does that reveal about our character? There's a great quote. The voyage to Corinthos is not for every man. Some version of that. The voyage to Corinthos is not for every man. Strabo, ancient Greek historian, philosopher, said that, and he was talking about the Isle of Corinth. The Greek city-state that was purely hedonistic, carnal. It was, imagine like Vegas at a port city, like Vegas meets Miami on steroids, like on rabies. The currency, the economy of this place was in many ways fueled by their hedonistic practices, pagan feasts and festivals, the Temple of Aphrodite that had 1,000 prostitutes working. I mean, he was talking about the fact that sailors, traders, ships would come in and these men would go get lost in this place and lose themselves and everything that they had would stay with the Temple of Aphrodite or with those the wallets of those those prostitutes, and it was hard for most people to escape that. It was an innovative city. very forward-thinking, progressive, open-minded. Periander, a tyrant there who has a checkered past, killed his wife, and there's a big story there I'd love to tell someday. But he was credited with a lot of innovations. One was he built a land bridge from one side to the other across the isthmus that allowed traders, basically sailors would come in, and instead of going all the way around a peninsula, they'd land in Corinth, and they'd go party while their boat was transferred by this land bridge, and then they'd meet it on the other side, a little hungover and a little poor. So with that in mind, the Apostle Paul, this is a man who, I've discussed this before, he consumes much of the New Testament, his letters to these churches that he had established or was looking after, take up the bulk of the New Testament. He was a Pharisee. He was a pious man. He was learned, and he followed his religion was to the letter of the law. And to him it was blasphemy for any man to claim that they were God. And so he saw that Jesus had done this. Others were claiming that he was the Messiah. And so he did what he believed was right, and he went and persecuted these Christians. He went after them ruthlessly. And Jesus dies. Jesus rises from the grave. Allegedly, he doesn't believe it, and he has this encounter with Christ one day where he sees this blinding light. It's like knocked from his horse, and he hears the voice of Christ say, "Why do you persecute me?" And he's like, "What is this?" For 3 days, he's blinded, and he goes to the house of some friends, and he's explaining what happened, and he's trying to understand it, and he believes because of this encounter that really was Christ and that he really rose from the dead. And because he's alive and no longer dead, then that transforms everything that he thought he knew, right? Out of that springs a person who now is going around spreading this good news, this hope that this Messiah really was who he said he was, and that he offers life, not death, at the end of that cross. And so he's planting these churches in places like Corinth. But it's with fear and trembling that he goes into this place. It's like walking down the strip in Vegas and going like, "Hey man, have you heard about Jesus and what he can do for you?" Like nobody wants to hear that, right? I mean, especially in this place of Corinth. But he goes anyway. And he starts this church, and these people would meet in each other's homes. They would break bread together, and they would refine these ideas that Christ talked about, the teachings of Christ, and they would struggle to figure out how to incorporate that into their daily lives, not having a New Testament to refer to. So they would get it wrong a lot of times. And so Paul, he would stay there for a time. When it felt safe for him to leave that, he would go and he would on to the next, wherever he was called to next, or drug away in chains to next. If that's what was going on at the time. A lot of what he's doing was upsetting to a lot of the Jewish leaders, a lot of the aristocracy. I mean, again, we're talking about somebody talking about a new kind of authority in the world, and so he was in chains a lot, persecuted a lot. So he leaves, and he gets word that this church in Corinth has done something unusual. They're there, they're alive and well. They are still professing to believe in the message of Christ. But they're wearing it like a badge. They've turned it into like the social club where, again, this culture is so open-minded. They're like, this is the new cool thing. Like, you have your gods and we did that, but like we found something even cooler. So there was like this pride about it. They would go to these feasts and banquets where they would, the Corinthians were famous for these massive feasts where they would, slaughter the fatted calf to a god, and people would pay good money to come and go to these parties, these festivals, and eat the meat that was sacrificed there to some god. And so some of these Corinthians in the Christian community there, they were like, well, we're not like saying we believe in that God anymore, but we're still going to these feasts. Like, we're still going to participate in this party because hello, and yeah, I'm eating the meat that was sacrificed to that God, but I don't believe it, so no big deal. It was this muddled form of faith. And there's this kind of arrogance that they had. They were this sort of puffed up view of themselves in that community where they're not like, you heathens, we got this thing figured out. So he writes this letter, okay? This is 1 Corinthians 4, 8 through 14. He says, already you have all you want. Already you have become rich. Already you have begun to reign, and that without us. How I wish you really had begun to reign, so that we might also reign with you. For it seems to me that the apostles have been put on display at the end of the procession, like those condemned to die in the arena. We've been made a spectacle to the whole universe, to angels as well as to human beings. We are fools for Christ, but you are so wise in Christ. We are weak, but you are strong. You are honored. We are dishonored. To this very hour, we go hungry and thirsty. We are in rags. We are brutally treated. We are homeless. We work hard with our own hands. When we are cursed, we bless. When we are persecuted, we endure it. When we are slandered, we answer kindly. We've become the scum of the earth, the garbage of the world. I write you this not to shame you, but to warn you, my dear children. He was warning them that when their identity is rooted in the flesh, in the things of this world, even in the piety of that it leaves us small and flawed creatures. The irony of being puffed up and arrogant is that it reveals how little we are. I wish, as unsexy as it is, there's nothing sexy about suffering. Nobody wants to talk about suffering for others. But I wish for a life that doesn't look like the silhouette of myself being cruel and wicked to another when I'm not getting my way. That doesn't look like the puffed up arrogance and pride of a pious young churchgoer in Corinth. I wish for a life that looks like the silhouette of the cross. The silhouette of somebody who lives well and still suffers for the love of others. See, we're not so much called to be good. We're called to be in relationship with the source of goodness and love. That by virtue of the fact that we're in relationship with the source of all love and goodness, that we start to look like that thing. The voyage to Corinthos is not for every man, because most of us are willing to suffer for others.